Okay. So good evening, everybody. My name is Yoriko Kishimoto. I'm the president of the board of directors for Midpen Open Space, and I am calling this meeting to order at 7 o'clock. This meeting is being held in person here at the administrative office and by telecommunication pursuant to Government Code 54953. So members of the public are welcome to attend and participate in person or via Zoom. And for those attending by Zoom, the instructions are available on the meeting agenda. So, Madam Clerk, would you please call roll?
Director Gleason,
Here.
Director Christine Tucker,
Here.
Director Riffle,
Here.
President Kishimoto,
Here.
Director Holman,
Here.
Director McNiven,
Here.
Director Sear.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have an announcement about a closed session that we had last week on April 5th, which is that we took no reportable action. And this is the time for oral communications. Is there anyone wishing to speak on oral communications?
President Kishimoto, I do not have any oral comments.
Okay. Well, actually, at this time, I just want to take a minute to just to say that I think we were all shocked to hear about past president and board member Pete Siemens. He had, as you all know, he had just stepped off just a brief 4 months ago after 30 years of truly dedicated passion. He really loved the district. So and I think it was a two-way street. So and I think he contributed so much to the formation of during the formative years of the district, and you will be sorely missed. So I know that we're going to be speaking later in the year about a way to honor both him and former President Hassett as well. But I did want to acknowledge that very sad news and see if there's any comments that my colleagues want to make. Yes, please.
Yeah, I would thank you and thanks for saying those words and giving us the opportunity. So yes, I was shocked and very, very saddened by Pete's passing, and I feel very lucky to have served my entire time on the board with Pete. So your words about his passion definitely were true, but also is I just learned a lot from Pete about being on the board and representing the district and doing what the right thing to do for the district is and going forward. So you're right. Even though he's not on the board, for some reason, I'm very, very much going to miss Pete and what he represented and what he did for the district. So thank you. Yeah, as Pete might have said, it's 31 years. But yeah, I want to express my sympathy to, there's so many people who knew Pete so much longer than I have, but I think he really changed me as well. I think I probably would not be here if it wasn't for Pete. And I want to say that he was still engaged. Just recently he went to one of the Bear Creek public communication sessions, and he was there expressing his opinion. He was just as feisty as ever. And I spoke to him about 3 weeks ago. I had asked him back before the new year if he would continue to mentor me. And I called him up because I had a sort of a tough question I was wrangling with. And he gave me his honest opinion in that way that, where he could be disagreeing with you, but he made me feel like part of the process. And I really, really valued that. I'm going to miss that a lot. So, yeah, just very sad.
Yeah, I'll just report on how I found out about this. I was at the Water Commission meeting this afternoon, and the representative from Los Gatos told me about it, and I hadn't caught the email before that hand. So it's just an interesting series of connections. But I probably served with Pete longer than anybody else and considered him a good friend for years and years and years. And one of the things that we used to be able to do before COVID was go out after board meetings once in a while and just have an opportunity to socialize, which was really helpful in lots and lots of ways. And Pete and Diane joined Craig and his wife and my wife and our son and future son-in-law, future daughter-in-law. Anyway, there were 10 of us who visited China for 2 weeks, and it was just a really fantastic trip. So Pete and I go back a long way, and I too shall miss him very, very much. So look forward to the opportunity to celebrate his life in the not too distant future. So thank you.
I also was very surprised based on the last encounters I had with them, which are not as recent as some other board members. But perhaps this is the board president's intention. But could I suggest that we hold this meeting in honor of Pete?
We will do that, or I can adjourn in his name as well, right? Yes.
Just to provide some historical perspective on Pete's tenure on the board, I first met him along with Jed and Larry back during the coastal annexation effort more than 20 years ago when that campaign was, was really ramping up. And at that time, Pete was so devoted to the coast, and he really appreciated his guidance and his thoughts and his support of the efforts. So it was just so interesting then to come back, many, many years later and be on the board with him and to realize that the depth of knowledge and kind of wisdom that he has about the district and our work and kind of just the ethos that he brought to his board service was always really inspiring and helpful to me. So he will be sorely missed. I can't believe we don't have him as a resource anymore.
Okay, well, thank you for those words. And yes, and if the board would like, I can send some flowers to to Diane, his widow. So I'll be in touch. Okay, great. Well, thank you.
Let us know if we can help with that.
All right. Thank you. And I know members of the staff will be missing him as well. Okay, well, back to business. We're at the adoption of agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. And roll call, please.
Director Gleason,
Yes.
Director Christine Tucker,
Yes.
Director Riffle,
Yes.
President Kishimoto,
Yes.
Director Holman,
Yes.
Director McNiven,
Yes.
Director Sear.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, thank you. So we're on to the consent calendar. There are 4 items. So is there any board member who wishes to pull an item or have a comment? And Director Riffle.
I don't want to pull any, but I did want to make a comment about item 4. We're at the
Okay.
appropriate time.
Yes, I think now's the time.
Great. I would just like to thank the Bond Oversight Committee. In fact, we have one of the members, Curtis Cole, is here. Thank you for coming, Curtis. And also to Brian Silker, who's the chair, I believe, of the Bond Oversight Committee, for the work that they did in doing their job and fulfilling what the public asked them to do and what we asked them to do. So I just want to say thank you very much for that and for your report. And I will support their recommendation.
Okay, great. Yes, I think there are two new members on there. So yes, I shoot, the other one is not here, but yes, thank you so much. And any other comments or questions? So if not, somebody like to make a motion?
Move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Roll call, please.
I just want to note that we do not have any oral comments on this item.
Okay, thank you.
Director Gleason,
Yes.
Director Christine Tucker,
Yes.
Director Riffle,
Yes.
President Kishimoto,
Yes.
Director Holman,
Yes.
Director McNiven,
Yes.
Director Seer.
Yes,
Thank you. Motion passes 7-0.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so we have one main business item today, which is item number 5, proposed purchase of the remaining 33% undivided interest in the 611-acre South Cal property from Post, which is located at 1000 Verde Road.
Thank you, Luana. Okay. All right. Let me share it. Oh, just a Zoom? Okay. Okay. All right. Yes, okay. Right there. I think I got it now. Thank you. All right. Tonight I was going to present the South Cal residence purchase. And in 2020, the board approved a 54% interest in the South Cal property, which is 611 acres.
Mike, would you mind moving the microphone over? Thank you.
Sure. And here are the general manager's recommendations for purchase of the South Cal residence property. And authorize the purchase of Post's remaining 33% interest in the South Cal Ranch property, which for a purchase price of $1,251,000, and allocate $450,000 of interest income from Measure AA bond proceeds to help fund this purchase. The 33% interest would bring the district's total ownership interest to 87%. Approve and accept a public trail easement along Verde Road, and amend the preliminary use and management plan for the additional ownership, including the residents. And let's see here. Okay. Yeah, is that working?
So Mike, I noticed that list of recommendations is different from the staff report, unless it's been updated. Like, for example, CEQA is not included in your, does that?
CEQA is a part of the overall. I was just going right to the project. So yes, also approve CEQA.
Okay, so
Yeah.
basically the general manager's recommendation as they are in the staff report.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So the property is located approximately 3 miles south of the city of Half Moon Bay. It is bisected by both Highway 1 and Verde Road. It's outlined in gold on the screen. And then the purple segment of trail shown is the proposed new trail for the Prisma to the Sea trail, which will be brought to the board by Planning Department and Land and Facilities later this spring. And then that connects into existing trails on the Prisma Creek Preserve, including the Ridge Trail. This will also provide, in the future, a trail connection to the Cal Prisma Coastal Trail. And this corridor and project is also a part of a more aspirational vision of the Bay to the Sea Trail. Okay, the buttons are not advancing. We should just do that. Okay. Okay. Now, but. All right. So this is essentially the project that was brought to you in 2020 when we were the property interests were divided as follows. The Marsh family owns a 13% interest, and that includes the farm property that is 236 acres, primarily west of Verde Road, with the exception about 10 acres that goes with the uplands at the south end of the property. And then post 33% interest, they had exclusive use and management of the residence. And at the time of the purchase, we declined purchasing the residence. And there are reasons that we now want to purchase the residence, and I will go into those. So in 2020, as I mentioned, we picked up our initial interest. And that at that time, we did decline the residence. It had an appraised value of over $1.4 million. And there were improvements and repairs needed that were estimated at $300,000 for a total investment of $1,725,000. We do have residents 3 miles away, a ranger residence on Prisma Creek Road, and then approximately 5 miles away at the intersection of Stage Road and Highway 84 at the Gordon Ridge property. And since that time in 2020, Post has invested $200,000. And I'm not going to go into the list of improvements, but they were pretty substantial. Plumbing, electrical, painting, lots of water improvements, structural, just cleaning up and doing safety projects on the property, significantly adding 3 new water tanks for 20,000 gallons. And they've also done things to get water easements from the adjoining owners to go all the way to the adjudicated creek that provides water for this house. The remaining things that need to be done are just a little bit of demo and removal of the unpermitted apartment in a barn on the property, which I'll talk about a little bit more. This is a picture in 2020 on a brighter day in a dingier house, and 2023 on a cloudier day with a brighter house. This is a side view of the house. A new roof was put on. And then this is the Prisma Sea Trail. These are the 3 routes that have been brought to the P&R committee. And I believe all the board members have had a chance to be out on the property. As I mentioned, later in the spring, this will be brought to the full board. The recommended preferred route is the purple route, and it also provides a loop route, 1A and B. Route B runs within 50 feet of the residence, just to show the proximity. And then this is on the road that would be used for the upper loop of loop A and B1, and it's overlooking the residence. And what you're really seeing there in white amongst the cypress trees is the barn. And then to the west, you are seeing the southern parking lot to the Cal Prisma Coastal Trail. And as far as the proximity goes, here's a zoom in of the same area where the residence is, and then a picture. And you can see with the purple line just how close that is to the front of the residence. And I'll say that it's one thing if it's a district-owned residence and to have a public trail going across the front yard. It's another thing if it's a retained private residence. It'd be quite a conflict. And this is another way of kind of looking at it. Between that fence and the cypress trees is approximately where the trail would run, and you can just see how close that is to the house. And then I wanted to just talk about some of the implications and considerations for and reasons for wanting to buy this residence. The proposed parking area is within 0.3 of a mile to the south, and the trail easement that Post holds from Verde Road to Highway 1, which is just across Highway 1 from the parking lot, is just 1/10 of a mile to the north. I already mentioned that the proposed trail would be within 50 feet of the residence. This also conflicts with some of our coastal service guidelines, which would require a minimum of 300 feet. In rare situations, it would be 50 feet. And as mentioned earlier, Post has made all of these repairs, including all the ones that we originally identified back in 2020. Okay. We also met with San Mateo County Planning in early 2022, and the allowable barn uses are for storage of district equipments and vehicles and supplies for our coastal area projects. And also the county would allow for, similar to what we have at the event center, a couple of locations for patrol and maintenance staff workstations. But the county also said the residence could not be used as a small field office. There is a bathroom that could be retained for staff use. And then there was no need to go back and get a general plan conformity for this because we had already done this for the Uplands property in 2020. And then the proposed uses of the residence would be consistent with the planned agricultural development zoning in the county. And you may recall, though I know we have a couple new board members, in 2020, the property had 4 conservation easements. And that's because in 1989, Post actually purchased to protect this property and put it in easements with grant funding from the Coastal Conservancy. So the Conservancy in 1989 held both a conservation easement and a conservation and trail easement. And 2 years later, in 1991, Post sold the property to the Marsh and Andrini families. And they put almost identical easements over the property. Another conservation easement, another conservation and trail easement, 4 easements, which all kind of achieve similar goals. So it was a little confusing and cumbersome. And so at the time, Post and the Conservancy were already talking about amending these easements and modernizing them. And one of the things Post wanted to do was put some affirmative agricultural protections in the easement with their agricultural program. And so that process was started, and we've been very involved in that process. And 2 new easements were recorded and agreed to by both Marsh and the district. And then in that process, the Conservancy was quit claiming their interest in the 2 new easements. So Post is the only holder of these 2 easements. Now, the conservation easement is the one that affects the upland property, as well as the farm property and the residence, so the entire property. And I mentioned the affirmative agricultural uses. And on the Marsh property, they do dry farming on the fields between Verde and Highway 1, and then grazing to the west of Highway 1. And of course, we have a grazing tenant on the upland property. And it also continues to protect natural, scenic, and open space and recreational values. It provides for farm labor housing on the properties. it also eliminates a building site on the upland property. So originally this was intended to be sold to someone so that they could have a nice house on the coast. So that has been eliminated by this easement. It also provided for parking areas at the site that is west of Verde Road, as well as below where the corrals are on the east side of Verde Road within the easement. And then the conservation and trail easement really just covers the farm property. And it only, it identifies trails along the farm property west of Highway 1 as an extension of the Cal Purisima Coastal Trail on the coastal bluffs, and then along the southern perimeter and along Highway 1. But it continues to protect all of the other conservation values of the property.
Mike,
Yes.
there's a question here.
Would you like questions now, or I have a question on the slide? Would you like me to wait, or?
It's the board's pleasure. I can do it now or at the end of the presentation.
Well, if it's clarifying question, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question about the farm labor housing. We're eliminating one of the buildings, but the conservation easement allows for farm labor housing. What is that? What might that look like?
Well, I think it's primarily for the benefit of the farm property where the kind of dilapidated barn is across from the residence. It allows for putting farm labor housing there in the future.
I see, okay.
We could do it too. Water is a limiting factor with an adjudicated creek system. But it does provide for that, and farm labor housing doesn't have the same building permit requirements as a single family residence does.
So if I'm understanding this properly, then this conservation easement covers Midpen, the Midpen's interest, but then also that farm property.
It covers the entire 611 acre property.
Okay, got it. Right. For some reason, I thought it was
Yeah.
just a portion of it. All right, thank you.
I probably should have said that at the outset. Yeah. Okay.
Good. I think there'll be opportunity for questions later as well. So go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. Purchase terms. Already mentioned the purchase price of $1,251,000. That includes all of the improvements that Post has done at a cost of $200,000. And so when you look at the appraised value and the net value at 2020, that's an approximate savings of what we were considering, but discouraged us of $474,000. Also contemplated in the tenants in common agreement, which is a part of this project, was a grant of public trail easement on Verde Road. And I have a slide for that since the picture's worth 1,000 words. And this is getting a grant of that to do it now because it's important to have it now for the trail improvement and parking projects. We would also amend both the tenants in common agreement and the water allocation agreement for the adjudicated water rights, eliminating Post's interest. So Marsh's interests remain the same. Really what we get is we get use and management of the residents, and we get the water rights associated with the residents. But for Marsh, it stays unchanged. And then there's a caretaker agreement that was entered into with Post after they did the improvements. We have a land and facility staff person who's in that caretaker agreement that will be assigned to the district. And then we will go through our process to put them in a district rental agreement shortly thereafter. And we're anticipating closing by the end of this fiscal year. Next steps are to have Post just to do the final cleanup of the illegal apartment and eliminate that building violation. And then we would be amending the land division. Instead of 3 parcels, 2, the residents would be incorporated into the upland property. And I have a couple of maps that will help. So here is the trail easement. And so if you look at the north end of the parking lot, To get beyond the access road, which is kind of in that faded white, the trail easement runs along Verde Road and then would cross so that it is not crossing into the road and creating a potential conflict with either the grazing operator or patrol vehicles. And so that easement, interestingly enough, will be granted by all of the existing 3 tenants and common owners. That's the district, Post, and Marsh, to the district. And so we've worked with the title company on that and outside counsel. And so that will secure that we have that trail easement, which is needed for these projects on Prisma to the Sea. And then here's the amended land division. So you can see the residence is now totally encompassed, and it's part of the upland property. Should make our minor subdivision application simpler and more supportable by the county. And then Marsh's property remains unchanged. It's the kind of outlined red area of the property. And with that, I can open it up to questions.
Okay, well, thank you. It is so complicated, and so thank you for doing that. I'm sure there'll be some questions, and I see questions from Director Holman.
Can you remind me, Mike, the caretaker tenant, is that right now it's a Post employee, but it will be a Midpen employee, or can you clarify that for me?
It's currently a Midpen land and facilities employee.
Okay,
And he's been taking care of the property, taking care of the grounds, and has been doing some projects, but it is an agreement with Post.
okay. That's a good clarification. Thank you.
And because we have a range of residents on Prisma Creek, this has been identified as being appropriate for having a land and facilities tenant in that property.
And I guess one last, and it's late to probably request a change, but it'd be great to be able to keep the apartment in the barn. And there's no variance process that would allow that to stay?
There isn't. In fact, in the PAD zoning, the county has not adopted the state ADU requirements. So when we had that meeting with the county, that is something we talked to them about. But we really did want to at least retain the restroom and see how far we could kind of stretch uses based on what the zoning allows. It's a similar comment that the Farm Bureau made at our consultation, that, it's a shame to see taking a unit out. It was built without permits. And it was essentially, it did come up in our subdivision application. They did flag it as a building violation. So,
Okay, thank you. And as always, thank you to those who gave the tour, because there's nothing like a tour to be able to see what you're talking about then when you see it like this. So that was terrific. Thank you.
yeah. And not a bad view from that front porch.
Yeah, spectacular. Yeah. Yes, Director Whipple.
Thank you, Mike, and I'm very much in support of moving this forward, but I just want to clarify something. Could you go back to the map that shows what Midpen owns and what Bob Marsh will own?
Mhm.
And my question, while you're getting back to that, is just around our planned uses for that, and how is that accommodated for in the relationship, the new relationship with the Marsh property?
Marsh has been supportive of the Verde Road Trail. We have provisions for being able to, we would put fencing and signage in, and we have talked with planning about doing some interpretive signage, but also that we have neighboring farm operations and grazing operations, and to respect those uses. So planning has done a really good job consulting with the Marshes with our grazing tenant Fontana, as well as just immediately to the north, the Juicy family's farm operation. And they've had a series of meetings with them, and they will be reaching out to them once again before we go to the full board on approval of this project. So Bob Marsh has been very supportive of all of this, because it also has allowed he and his family to actually own this property when this land division is done in 100% fee title.
Great.
Did that answer your question?
Just, yeah, it mostly.
Okay, what didn't I get?
Oh, yeah. The only follow on is, are there any restrictions? So for example, when we're running a trail next to ag, that there's times that we have to shut the trail down because of spraying or something like that. Are there some restrictions now that we're going to have to keep in mind?
Because they dry farm this and they don't have the water, sufficient water to be doing irrigation. They're not spraying fertilizers or things. And now that the trail easement that goes on the southern boundary from Verde Road to Highway 1, that easement has, that post holes has language in it. And that has grown in Brussels sprouts. But that's an easement right post has, but whenever that is turned into a trail, that will be subject to closure, probably half a dozen times a year when there is spraying. And, and we've talked to Juicy about that, he would, where he runs his road for his crops, he would kind of run a buffer road on the edge of the trail easement, just to kind of further separate a little bit the agricultural use. But that is indeed the case, that it could be closed.
Right.
But that is not a part of this project, but it will be a part of the future connection to get to the coastal trail.
Got it. Okay, great. Thank you.
I too am very much in support of this, and we'll have some more comments later, but I did want to ask about the house. I feel obligated at this point, given some of our experiences in other areas. Are there any other infrastructure issues associated with this house that you can possibly think of that are going to come back to affect us in the future that Post hasn't helped us with so generously?
Normal wear and tear. The tenant has done some additional fixes. In the last year, there's a power pole. There's a feed for the pump at Prisma Creek. Post took that on and got PG&E to replace the power pole and put a new meter in for the water intake. And those, I asked them to, since one of the property owners was Marsh, they worked with the two private property owners to formalize waterline easements that are pertinent to this property, which benefit the residents and the farm property. They've been very responsible in following through and doing all the things, not only that would help our ownership, but that also help the farm ownership in the future. Things may go wrong, but it had a new roof on it. It is made it through the storms well.
The trees did too.
Yeah. But I think for the time being, everything's been identified, but as everybody who knows, houses have ongoing maintenance and repairs.
Well, and to that point, I wonder, I don't know how we do this or if we do this, or whether it would be appropriate at this juncture to begin to think about budgeting for just maintenance and repair on that property moving forward, on that residence moving forward. How is that handled?
I'm going to ask our staff to help me here, but we do have an ongoing maintenance management system where we log all of our projects, assets, facilities, residences, etc., so that we have an ongoing tracking of the repairs that have been made, but then also the repairs that need to be made in the future, since all of this requires ongoing maintenance. But if you want to elaborate further.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, volume is a little bit higher than it was last month. Good evening, Stefan Jaskulak, CFO. General manager has it absolutely correct. We have a computer system where we log all the repairs for everything, pretty much everything, housing, but also culverts and everything else. So that helps us track to see where the pain points are, where much of the need is. But separately for that, we also have a very robust capital maintenance reserve. And I don't know exactly where we are at the moment, but we're somewhere between $6, $7, $8 million in that. The original intent was for large capital maintenances like repaving Mount Eminem Road. I mean, that's several miles of pavement. Won't be cheap, so we want to set money aside for that. One of these days, I do hope to actually have a consultant do a reserve study. It's commonly done with homeowners associations, if you're familiar with that, where you look at all the structures that you have, the roads, the garages, the gates, and everything else. You come up with a lifespan of everything and figure out how much to set aside every year to make sure that when the time comes, you have funds set aside for that. So far, we've put money into it, be conservative, and we keep growing it. So if there's something huge that needs to be done on that, we can fund that out of that. If the whole house caves in, for example, we need to rebuild it, we can do that. But regular maintenance is basically done in the regular annual budget.
Okay. Helpful, thank you.
Any other questions? I have a couple questions and I'll go to the public then. So this, you said there used to be 4 conservation easements and they were combined and modernized in September of 2022.
Yes.
So, yeah. So that, well, number one, I guess, isn't it pretty difficult to modernize easements? and were we part of that? Did that come to the board? I just don't remember that.
No, but it was contemplated in the 2020 board report that Post and the Conservancy would be doing that, and that we were a part of that. As we were doing our planning process. The original easement had restricted trails to the northerly and easterly boundary, and those were eliminated. It was never contemplated that this was going to be in public ownership, and any of those issues were removed from the easement, because the Conservancy was also very supportive of this project, and they're also a funding partner on the trail study. So they were combined into 2 new easements from 4 prior easements. And I think that probably the biggest changes were for us were allowing the public ownership, and 2, the affirmative ag protections within the easements.
So is it, so who holds those easements? Is it Post?
Post is the sole holder of those.
Of both of them.
And the Conservancy quit claim their interest. They're like what is called a third-party beneficiary. If Post fails to monitor their easements, the Conservancy can step in and enforce them.
I see. So it was done in 2022 based on, basically what the board had approved in 2020.
Correct. And the other thing was, I didn't mention, but there were the old mineral rights and oil rights on this property. Post held them, and they were to the Uplands property. You saw on your field trip, some of the old pipe remains, and those were quit claim to the district. Ideally, on the properties you buy, you want to hold the mineral rights so that somebody else doesn't hold them and want to exercise them. So that was another aspect that was cleared up after 2020.
I was like, there were 1,001 details. Yes, did you have a question?
I'm a little unclear as to the difference between a conservation easement and a trail and conservation easement. That's what it's called, right?
Yes. So
And
the,
then there's a third one, just a plain old trail easement.
yes, yes. And so what we're doing on Verde Road is a plain old trail easement. I think the difference is that the trail and conservation easement defines an area of the farm property that future trails can be put on to extend the coastal trail. I've never quite understood, posted this also on Purisima Farms, why they did two easements that in many ways were the same, but the other one had more of an emphasis on trails. And it's just a structure they did. And I guess the Conservancy wanted to keep it. I think you could do them all in one, but reducing it from 4 to 2 is better than it was. It could have been even better. In my humble opinion, if we'd gone to one easement. But it's a good question.
So, does that mean that trails aren't allowed on the upland property if it's just a conservation easement?
No, we're not restricted where we can put the trails.
Oh, you're just restricted where you can put the trails.
Yeah.
Is what a trail easement is.
Yeah. And the
Got it.
farmer wanted the trails on the perimeter, did not want his farm property bisected. I mean, we're certainly trying to be very respectful of the grazing operation, but we didn't want to be inhibited. The prior easement, like I said, was would have put trails along the both the northern boundary of the upland property and eastern boundary. And I think this just gave us a lot more flexibility in looking at trail routes.
Mm.
And it was a bone of contention for the Farm Bureau that had been changed.
Thanks.
There's no questions for the board. Is there any public comment on this?
President Kishimoto, I do not have any oral comments.
Okay, well, so I'll bring this back to the board for discussion and motions. So what is before us is really the 6 items, which are on the staff report, and which are different from what you showed, actually. This doesn't include,
Yes,
Yeah.
it's incomplete.
it's incomplete, right?
Yes.
So what you should look at is your staff report, yeah.
So Director Kishimoto, if I could just make some comments. You know, all of our properties on the coast seem to be complicated, but this one is really complicated. But it is also perhaps one of the best examples of a place in which the district has worked really hard to build relationships over time. And that's really thanks to Mike and his team and so many of the district staff who've been just year after year creating relationships and working with the Marsh family, the Giusti family, the Fontana family, not always easily, but and with Post, of course, our main partner. So when you look at this property, when you go out there, and we all have now, you see what an extraordinary place it is, and how iconic it is in many ways. What a classic coastal property it is. So I'm so happy we're at this point now, and we're moving forward with so many other aspects that, like the Bay to the Sea Trail and all those, the Purisima to the Sea Trail. So I'd be very happy to move the general manager's recommendation, and with great thanks to Mike for the work that you have done over the years to make this all come together so beautifully.
Is it okay if I give a little plug for the caretaker? Rob Scalingo called me early in his caretaker tenancy and asked if he could have Bob Marsh, Vince Fontana, and John Giusti's phone number. And he took it upon himself to introduce himself to each of them. And Bob and Vince in particular really like him. They've noticed what a good job he's taken care of. He's helped Vince with his cattle. And so, you know, I think it extends through a lot of our staff in how they, you know, work with our neighbors. And so I just I thought that was a good opportunity to mention what Rob has done.
No, thank you.
Yeah, that's great.
So I'll second the motion and really appreciate the comments that you just added to make it an even richer experience. Thank you.
Okay, so the motion is for the 6 items on the staff report.
Yes, on the revised agenda.
Right.
Yeah. Or the revised staff report, excuse me.
Okay, so we have a motion and second. Any more comments? Yes, Director
Yeah,
Ripple.
Just a quick comment, just to add what Director Christine Tucker just said. I'm obviously very much in support of this because, you know, if I look at our coastal mission over there on the wall, this purchase fits right into that. So I'm always testing our work to see if that's the case, and I think this is a great example of that. Number one. Number two is I'm not usually a fan, as you all know, of purchasing structures, but I think this is a great example of when we should make an exception to my rule. Not only for the house, and boy, the comment or example you just gave us, Mike, is exactly right on the reason that I think it's a good idea sometimes to have structures like this. So that, as well as the usefulness of the outbuildings and so on. So I think that's a great idea. So I will be supportive of that. Third thing is I want to really thank Post and the Coastal Conservancy, because without them, we wouldn't be here. But I really want to thank Mike, you and your staff for, you're right, this is complicated, but you know, if I think about it, this is what the district does really well. We are really good at purchases like this, complicated purchases like this, and mostly because of the guy standing up there. So I just want to say thanks for making this happen, and let's do as many as we possibly can before September. So thank you.
Maybe some simple ones. President Kishimoto, we will be sure to include all of the general manager recommendations on our future presentation.
Okay, great. More comments? Yes, Director Sear.
Well, just to echo what the others of the board have said, and deeply appreciated, Mike, because this is an incredibly complex process that's taken a long, long time. Still has a ways to go, but it's getting there. And looks like we're over the horizon. We can almost be sure. So this is great. Thank you.
Yes, oh, yes.
I'll just echo that too.
Okay,
You go up there and you see this beauty and you don't appreciate what's been going on behind the scenes. So thank you for making it look effortless.
Yes, well, and I'll just add to those thanks and also just reaffirm what a spectacular field trip inside it is. I mean, it's a real, you brought us a real jewel for the Mid-Penn open space, so thank you. Okay, so we're ready for a vote, I think. Roll call, please.
Director Gleason,
Yes.
Director Christine Tucker,
An enthusiastic yes.
Director Ripple,
Yes.
President Kishimoto,
Yes,
Director Holman,
Yes.
Director McNiven. Yes. Director Sear.
Most emphatically, yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 7-0.
okay. Well, thank you, Mike. And okay, so next items, there's 2 items which are going to be continuing the overviews of 2 departments. One is the engineering and construction department, and the other is the real property manager. And just to set expectations about, is it about 15 minutes or so?
I'll keep it to 15.
Okay, sounds good.
Did I get that right? Oh, good. Thank you. Good evening, board. Jay Lin, Engineering and Construction Manager. Before I jump in, I also want to acknowledge Director Siemens a little bit. I think it's fitting that I'm giving this presentation tonight because he was very instrumental in starting the engineering construction department. And I did have a lot of chances to spend a lot of time with him during the AO ad hoc committee for both the design and the furniture portion. I know Director Kishimoto and Holman were both in that. I think he left a good legacy here at the district in terms of this building. I know he had a lot of good inputs, and yeah, he was always encouraging to me. So really appreciated him. My thoughts are with him and his family. So. Okay, where was I? Good. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of engineering and construction. Our mission statement is to implement large-scale capital projects to improve and maintain Midpenn's infrastructure and facilities that are necessary to facilitate ecologically sensitive and safe public access and ongoing stewardship and care for the land. And here's a picture of our staff taken yesterday, in fact, right outside here. So in 2015, when the first FOSM was developed, as I mentioned earlier, ENC was a recommendation out of the FOSM to support the project delivery of the district. I've been honored to be at Midpenn since 2016, working for the best agency possible and to lead our talented staff here. Our department continues to learn and grow, and we consistently deliver our capital projects.
Director Holman, did you have a question?
Yep. Could you go back to the last slide, please?
Sure.
Would you care to mention by name the staff members that you have here?
Yes, can do. I actually have another slide later for the org chart, but I'm happy to go through it. Left to right, we have capital project managers Lee Gugamos, Scott Reeves, Paul Kavam, myself, Jay Lin, Ivana Yoon, and Marie Lanka, who's our admin assistant. Quick overview of kind of our project planning delivery process. This is a very simplified version of that. We start with land acquisition, similar to what Mike just discussed for South Cal. We go through the planning environmental secret process with planning natural resources, and then ENC really take the project and run with the project to the finish line through construction. And then we hand it off to land facilities and visitor services for maintenance and patrol. I like to use the analogy of a relay race, where real property planning, natural resources does their due diligence very slowly, meticulously. Once we get the baton, we have a short time frame to really deliver the project, usually because there's funding tied to it, permitting requirements, seasonal restrictions, and just commitments to our partners or to ourselves, to the public. Next, I'll go over our core functions, and just to kind of be very brief with it, to oversee and manage design, engineering, permitting, bidding, construction management, contracting, and project management for large-scale capital projects, typically something over $100,000. To ensure that capital projects comply with all necessary requirements and regulations related to construction, including building requirements, mitigation measures, permit conditions, and federal regulations. Finally, to develop and assist in cost estimation and constructability assessments. So those are our core functions for engineering and construction. In terms of the org chart, starting at the top with the public to the board, general manager, we're in the project planning and delivery business line under the leadership of Susanna Chen, and engineering and construction is in that business line with planning and real property led by Mike Williams, who we just spoke earlier. So here's the slide where I'll kind of run through the names of our staff. At the top, I'm the engineering construction manager. We share a administrative assistant, Marie Lanka, with planning department. And we have Scott Reeves here as one of our senior capital project managers, Paul Kavam, Zachary Alexander, Lee Gugamos, and then Ivana Yoon. At the core of our department function is project management and construction management. So that's a common denominator, but each of our staff brings a little bit of something different to the department. For example, Scott Reeves has a background in landscape architecture and experience in leading design, has really helped us streamline a lot of our conceptual designs in many of our project management practices. So having Scott, who has a lot of experience in design, kind of bypasses that consultant RFP process and kind of really leads us through that process quickly, adjust the designs on the fly. So he leads and he's on the left side of the senior capital project manager. Paul Kavam's background is in civil engineering and working in construction firms, has really helped us in our negotiation with contractors, as well as our constructability review when we assess a property or reviewing a set of plans and walking the site with them. Lee Gugamos is under Paul Kavam. He has a structural engineering background and has really identified a lot of critical path issues early on to help us with our project delivery. Ivana's planning and capital project management experience with different public agencies has really helped quickly untangle permitting challenges, as well as resolve conflicts with contractors in the field. Marie's creativity and can-do attitude has helped our group think outside the box. For example, our AO interpretive element, which was on consent earlier, we actually received no bids, and Marie kind of helped us regroup, went back out, did a ton of research, found more bidders, and we finally found somebody to bid on the project. So that project is finally getting more momentum. And last but not least, Zach Alexander, who's been at the district for quite some time. His planning and jack of all trades background has really helped complete many key projects as well as many one-off projects. In fact, Zach, kind of being a jack of all trades right now, he's juggling 2 hats at the moment. He's working in ENC as well as the acting senior resource management specialist in the natural resources department, kind of giving him more experience as a supervisor. And that's kind of a goal of our district too, is to really develop our staff kind of across the line in different areas of expertise. But I just want to take that time to kind of run through our work chart, kind of give a little background about our staff there. At the key of it all, we have 2 main programs that run out of ENC. We have the horizontal infrastructure program led by Scott Reeves and the vertical infrastructure program led by Paul Kavam. And I'll quickly go through some of the typical projects that each program does. In the horizontal infrastructure program, we do a lot of staging areas, parking lots, very similar to what we did at Mount Omanum Summit, as well as the La Honda Sears Ranch Road and the BCR public access. As some of the board members may recall, these are actually our 3 big rocks back in 2016 period, and we completed each one in 2017, 2018, 2019 to open the preserves to the public. Roads and trails is a big one that we do a lot of. Here's an example at Ravenswood Bay Trail, completed in 2021, that connected a critical link between critical link of the Bay Trail between Bay Road and University Avenue. Here's another example, Alpine Road, completed in 2022, Harrington Creek Trail in 2018, La Honda Creek. Grading and drainage is another big one. A lot of ditches, grading, drainage dips, and culverts. And here's one at Alma Trail at BCR as an example. Site improvements. Here's an example at Alma College Cultural Landscape Rehabilitation Project. Was done in 2021. Minigo Pond restoration was a big one. Our horizontal infrastructure program completed. Working with our natural resources department, we upgraded the ponds to improve the habitat for San Francisco garter snake and California red-legged frogs. Hazardous material abatement remediation is a big one. Zach Alexander from our department does a lot of that. Here's an example at the radar tower with him suited up, rest assured, he is not that guy scraping lead paint from what looks like a metal box there. Switching over to the vertical infrastructure program led by Paul Kavam. Some of the typical projects, the one we're studying at the moment, the administrative office project, as well as the South Area Field Office project in Campbell. We do a lot of bridges, such as the one at BCR Webb Creek Bridge and the Ravenswood Bay Trail Bridge that we completed back in 21. Structures repair and upgrades, similar to the Mount Umunum radar tower, where we repair concrete rebars, did a lot of hazmat abatement, weatherproofing, roofing, safety, drainage, and ventilation improvements at the tower. The Rancho San Antonio White Barn project, we replaced the roof in kind, did a lot of repair to the structural elements, a new floor, ADA access, and a lot of minor upgrades there. The Red Barn roof replacement was done in 22, essentially replacing the roof there. And we also do a lot of miscellaneous structures such as retaining walls and stairways, very similar to the ones we did at Mount Umunum. Structure disposition, coming to the board with a structure for the board to decide whether to do rehabilitation, repair, demolition, relocation. So those are several options we often come to the board with. And here's a picture of the White Barn, which we are going to do a lot of repairs on, upgrades to the roof, siding, structural supports, a bat box, and a view window into the barn for the public to get a nice view into the barn to see it and to see the bats inside. Another example for potential demolition is the Russian Ridge Rapley barn. And we usually try to demolish structures with safety concerns. Yeah, that's a cold year. And all our project managers work really closely with natural resources when we do all our projects, in fact, and we try to restore any demolition back to the natural environment. And this Billingsley demolition project is a really good example. You can't really tell there was ever a structure there. In fact, that picture is taken at the exact same spot. So Paul and his team led the demolition, removed the structure, restore the site back to the natural condition, working really closely with NR. And lastly, some of our upcoming 24, 25 priorities. I won't go through each one of these just because I think the board has had a chance to review this during the board retreat, and you'll have another opportunity at future board meetings. But the one thing I do want to point out is the first one is the FEMA storm repairs. That's something the district is working really closely with FEMA on right now to get funding. In fact, we have our initial meeting next Wednesday to start talking about the scope, funding opportunities, and start getting a clear picture of where we stand in terms of whether or not and how much funding we'll get for all the damages that's happened. And staff has also been working a lot on shifting our resources for next year to address a lot of damages that's occurred this past year. With that, I think the board has often said our best assets walk through the front door every day, and we value our talented staff. And we do what we can to keep them happy, motivated, and doing what we do. And with that, I'm happy to take any feedback, questions, comments you may have, and go from there. Thank you.
Okay. Well, fantastic presentation, and you have such a huge variety of jobs, so must keep everybody on their toes. Okay, I'm going to start down there. Yes.
Yeah, thanks very much. It was a great presentation. I was just wondering, was that Bear Creek Alma Trail picture from this winter?
No, it's not. That is during construction. I know which one you're referring to, the one with the culvert.
Yeah.
That is not from this winter. The one there's damage during this winter, but it's further up the trail. This is actually next to a retaining wall about 500 feet from the gate as you enter. Yeah. That's, yeah, good point.
Okay, I'm just gonna go, yes.
Yeah, I don't
go
have
down
any,
the row.
I don't have any questions, but I just want to say, you know, when I look at just the few staff members you have and the enormity of the projects that you wrap your arms around, it's really quite astonishing and impressive. So really am happy that we've had this opportunity to get a closer look at the work that you all do and kind of the breadth and depth of it. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
Dr. Riffo?
Yeah. So first of all, Jason, very nice job of in 15 minutes giving us an idea of what you and your team do. And with that, pretty incredible what looking at you've created, right? Because you started this thing, as I recall. And I'm going to channel Pete here a little bit because this was Pete's gleam, and I'm sure Pete's pretty happy with what you and your team have accomplished. So thank you for all of your great work and giving us a good tour of it. But I'm going to continue channeling Pete because Pete would say, yeah, that's all great, but how are you going to do more faster? And so my question kind of is, so if you look at your team, boy, you guys are doing a lot, but if anything, other than Mother Nature, what's kind of holding you back, or what's the friction that you all are seeing to say, yeah, we could do even more if?
Well, first, thank you for that comment, you know, and just the encouragement there. I think the thing that's holding us back is very similar to everyone else at the district, and that is just holding on to our good staff. I feel like the district itself is a bit of a breeding ground for talent. I think a lot of people come into the district. We hire people who are passionate about the work that we do. They get the training, but there's just a lot of opportunities, you know, around the peninsula in the Bay Area. And I think people, at least for my department, tend to leave, take a better position, and they do well. I think that attracting talent, keeping them, so that we have enough staff to keep our project delivery process moving, you know, efficiently year over year. I think getting that, having a good rhythm will really help us. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thanks.
Yes, Dr. Holman.
Yes, I'll join colleagues in thanking you. And it is stunning how much you do with such a small team. Maybe it's more obvious to others than it is to me, but I'm not clear what constitutes a horizontal infrastructure project versus a vertical infrastructure project.
Yeah, I should have prefaced that by saying there are a lot of overlaps. I think you're right. And I think the easiest way to explain horizontal versus vertical is everything that is flat is horizontal, and if it's a building structure related project will be a vertical infrastructure to us. So
didn't I see two different aspects of the Ravenswood infrastructure there that were both horizontal? But to me, to my eye, they're both horizontal,
Yeah.
but one was in vertical and one was in horizontal.
Right, one was actually a trail and the other one was depicting a bridge, which is kind of a structural engineering design construction element, whereas a trail is more of a landscape architecture, civil engineering design and construction.
So the latter is horizontal?
The latter is horizontal, correct. The trail
Okay.
portion is horizontal.
I may ask this question again another time.
Yeah, you bet.
So if you go to the list of projects for this year, that's a lot. That's an awful lot. And I do see the top of the list is the FEMA storm repairs, but it's hard for me to imagine that the FEMA storm repairs aren't going to have a bigger impact on that list than maybe what is depicted here. It's hard for me to imagine that, and maybe some of these aren't as big a projects as I'm anticipating, but some of them are really large and known to be large. So how is the first bullet point there, the FEMA storm repair is gonna more than likely impact this list?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of the FEMA repair work falls on land and facilities at the moment. And they've started addressing that as the issues come up. And we're hoping to get reimbursed for the work that they've already done. For engineering, construction, planning, natural resources, our task is to start the design permitting process for a lot of these bigger repair projects. For example, the Personal Creek Road repair, that's a major undertaking and it'll likely go multiple years. So we're looking to start it as soon as we can this fiscal year if we can, but definitely next fiscal year to start that process. And there are a few other ones, the Bear Creek Redwoods parking lot culvert. As some of you may know, the road failed on county right of way, and they've started the repair on that. That may have effect on our culvert in our parking lot. So we're starting to think about that and throwing resources next fiscal year to address that problem. But you're right in that a lot of the projects on this list, the scope may need to shift out a little bit, maybe by one fiscal year. And a lot of these projects are also kind of planning ENC co-led projects. So can't take full credit for all of this work here. I think an ADA barrier removal, just kind of picking that out, that's also shifting out by 1 year. So it's starting in FY25, but I added to this list just to kind of give you a snapshot of the next 2 fiscal years. But a lot of the construction jobs that we have slated to start, we want to start that and continue to push the FEMA work forward.
Okay, so this is going to sound contrary to the question that I just asked, but I was surprised to see the Honda Creek White Barn on this list because I think it's been maybe 3 years. And to my mind, that would be a small project. So I was really surprised that that isn't completed.
It has, and yeah, it is one that is getting ready to bid in, I think it's end of this month or early May. So the bid package is ready to hit the street to hire a contractor. And as I alluded to earlier, we did have quite a bit of staff turnover. And so we kind of focused on the main project the last year due to staffing shortage, which is the AO building. I think we threw a lot of staff time at the building to help with it, and just a lot of the active construction projects. So while it's important to us, it's on the list, that project did fall behind schedule a little bit. I think it was slated to start this spring, but it didn't.
Yeah, because it's,
So, yep.
I think it has been about 3 years. So
Yeah.
my last question is, there was one that I knew where everything looked familiar to me, except was it Billingsley?
Right.
Is that what it's called? I don't know where, I have not a clue where that is.
Yeah, that's in Sierra Azul.
Okay.
It was a property purchased back in 2021. Looking at Mike nodded. And we Loma Prieta area. Yeah, we knew it was a structure we needed to demolish right away because it was very dilapidated and people frequented that area. And our rangers have.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so this is not a time to review projects. This,
No,
you'll do
no,
that
I just-
ABC, yeah.
So, yeah, but I just hadn't never heard of that one. So that was kind of surprising. to me. So, okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions down there? Dr. Seaver?
Not a question, but a huge thank you. And it strikes me that a number of these obviously are more than one time. And, juggling your team to be able to at least make some progress on so many of these is really remarkable. So, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Let me see. I did have 2 quick questions. I guess one is, when we go out to bids, when we see that engineer's estimate is, so does your staff come up with that engineer's estimate or is that?
If there's a set of plans, we usually ask the consultants to provide that cost estimate.
I see.
Now, at the start of the project is when our staff will typically come in and kind of give a ballpark cost estimate on how much it would cost to, say, build a parking lot with 20 spots. So we'll kind of give a ballpark number on that. But the number you see typically in the board report, that's from the consultant. I would say 90% of the time.
Okay. And then employee housing, either renovations or repairs, is that done by your staff as well, or?
Renovation in terms of the design and the construction management? Yes. And if you kind of look on this list, middle of the pack, Sierra Azul Ranger Residence. Yeah, that's one that we're currently working on. It's led by Paul Kavam and his vertical infrastructure program. Still working with the county on getting the permits figured out, but we do have a design that's going to start here fairly soon.
Okay, yeah. Great. Oh, yes, General Manager.
This is Anna Ruiz, General Manager. Just a few comments. I just want to recognize Jay a little bit more because he came on board as a result of the first FOSM recommendations. And this was an effort for the district to really ramp up our capacity and our expertise, coming out of a successful voter approval of Measure AA, knowing that we had quite a road ahead of us to complete many capital projects, both complicated trails, new bridges, working on structures, et cetera, parking areas. And so we knew, and through the FOSM, it was confirmed that we needed this level of capacity and expertise in-house. And so we hired Jay as our first ENC manager, and he has helped develop and establish a very successful, competent, talented ENC department that has been accomplishing projects every year for the district and furthering that those Measure AA commitments and more. And a lot of work ahead of us to do, a lot of great work. But I just want to thank him for his leadership and for his efforts in establishing that department.
Thank you. My job is easier with these guys, so.
Yes, and I do remember Pete advocating for the construction department as well. So do we have any public comments?
President Kishimoto, I do not have any oral comments.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So with that, thank you so much.
We'll see if I can do any better the second time. I'm not very confident about it. I know. Oh, heck, just Albert, come up here and help me. Where's the start? Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's what I thought I did. Okay. I don't leave it, do I? Just right there. Sure. It'd be quicker that way. One. Yeah, right there. And while you're here, I tried to get the marker to work on the maps. Do you click it and then you're able to operate it, or do you have to hit one of the other icons? Do you want to get the laser gun? I will when I get to the map. So then I would hit the pen. And then click. Click. Okay. What do I do? That's right. I just wanted to use the tracer when I got to a map. The laser pointer when I got to a map. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm back. I got to embarrass my technical abilities in front of you twice this evening. Mike Williams, real property manager. And as Jay said, one of the most important assets that the district has is our staff. And from left to right, Ariel Starr is our administrative assistant, and we share her with the Natural Resources Department. Erin Peth is our planner. Other than the planning department, we are unique. Real Properties always had a planner. And it really is an essential function. Our planner attends all of the senior planner meetings with the planning manager and the senior planners, and keeps them informed on the projects that we're doing, and then also brings back the projects that planning may need real property help on. And it also functions as doing long-range planning and acquisition planning. So really the department has been very fortunate to have just a series of wonderful planners. And I will say we stole Erin from planning, and planning does a good job training staff. So we're very fortunate. And then there's me, and then there's Alan. And Alan and I are the two negotiators. One thing unique about the real property department is that the manager has always been kind of a working manager. And Alan and I both come from an appraisal background, which I think has been really helpful. Is one of the things that was very attractive when hired Alan. I think we're pretty good about helping determine the value of properties. We also both have a lot of lease and property management experience. So for 22 years, I was oversaw the property management program. But with each purchase that we have properties, we usually do the leasing and the licensing, and we do it in coordination with land and facilities in the property management program. And one of the things we try to do in working with all the departments is, if there are things we can do, especially on a project like with Post, where we have time, there's a lot of elements we can take care of beforehand to make the other departments' job a little easier. Cloverdale is a great example. There's a lot of assignments of the grazing leases. We were able to get a rangeland management plan prepared. We were able to get Post to, like with South Cal, do some improvements beforehand. We were able to do road inventories and phase 1s and phase 2s, and to give our land and facilities and our other departments a lot of things to work from on those types of projects with Post. And then Jasmine Leong on the far right is a real property agent 1. She started out as an admin assistant, and so she works primarily with Alan, but she is learning the ropes and is great help and support in all the projects we do. And she's done a couple presentations recently on projects that she's worked on. And with that, my org chart is, oh, now I need to get out of this thing. Maybe my arrow will work. There we go. My org chart doesn't include everybody else's org chart because this is a real property org chart. And one of the things I'll say about real property is, I'll borrow Suzanne's coin that we're small but mighty. We're a small department, but we get a lot done. And I'm not going to read through our two mission statements, but I wanted to reflect on the mission statements. So we have two missions. We have our original mission statement, and we have a coastal mission statement. And they're very similar in that they have three of the same elements: land conservation and natural resource protection and public access. And then, of course, the coastal mission adds supporting viable agriculture. And real property gets to work in all of those elements of our two missions. And as I like to remind staff, with each property that we protect, real property provides job security for all of the rest of the departments and staff. I was looking at all the projects Jay had up there, and with properties come problems or projects. So this is our mission and core functions. The mission is to purchase or otherwise acquire interests in strategic open space land, connect Mid-Penn open space lands with federal, state, county, city, and other protected open space lands, parklands, and watershed lands. And our core functions, and I looked at these, and I have some edits I would like to add to them, but I'll read through them. Provide comprehensive land conservation planning. I mentioned we have a planner in our department. An analysis to guide the land purchase program in coordination with other departments, and I would like to add, and conservation partners. The second core function: create and take advantage of opportunities to conserve a green belt of protected open space lands along ridgelines, foothills, baylands, and I would like to add coastal lands. Also to provide technical assistance to protect and secure our open space property rights and interests, including fee and easement interests. So we work very closely with our field staff and our legal department in protecting our property rights on our property. Each property we buy has a title report, and title reports have exceptions. Somebody may have an easement across our property. So we're always working with the departments. Our staff really knows our boundaries, and we have a lot of neighbors, and some of our neighbors love our lands more than they should, and in ways they shouldn't. And so we get involved, and we try to resolve those disputes, remove those encroachments, and sometimes they end up being exchange agreements. But we really rely on our patrol staff and our land and facility staff, and of course, our legal program. And then the final core function, develop and strengthen neighbor, conservation partner, and agency relationships to facilitate land conservation and protection. And I only have one more slide, and then I'll see if I can actually use the cursor. And this is land conservation opportunities and collaboration. And this is also going to involve collaboration with partners. So we're a very opportunity-driven department, and opportunities can be responded to, or they can be created. And one of the things I think the history of the district has been is that we respond quickly as a public agency when opportunities arise. The district's ability to respond quickly, and sometimes with partners, has made our program successful. And I wanted to give an extreme example of opportunities in the Sierra Azul area. on the map. Boy, I'm just really lame at this stuff. Here we go. The 1985 Lexington fire was literally the start of a 20+ year fire sale. In 1991, it was followed by the Loma Prieta earthquake. And the majority of close to 19,500 acres was purchased in those first 20+ years. And there were a lot of illegal structures that burned or were damaged in the earthquake, and a lot of people just really wanted to sell. And so that's a pretty extreme example of opportunities. And then I also want to talk about partnerships. Later this spring, the district will own a little over 5,000 acres of the Cloverdale Ranch property. And that is a significant partnership. With that, Post will have been involved in over 30% of 71,000 acres. The South Cal project that I discussed earlier this evening is a great example with that corridor of over 15 years protecting approximately 2,000 acres to create that Prism to the Sea corridor. But Post isn't our only partner. We have worked with Santa Clara County Parks to connect Sierra Azul to Ahmed and Quicksilver on Jocks Ridge as a partnership. In Stevens Canyon, we've worked with Santa Clara County Parks to connect Lower and Upper Stevens Creek County Park with Montebello and the Piketty Preserves. And then in recent years, we have partnered with two communities that we've not done a lot of partnerships. And they're both the western and eastern ends of the Bay to the Sea project with the cities of East Palo Alto and Half Moon Bay. The Ravenswood Bay Trail provides the East Palo Alto community access to the Bay Trail, our preserve, and the city's Cooley Landing property right from the community. This was also an opportunity made when the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission wanted to relocate the Hetch Hetchy line underground and under the Ravenswood Preserve. And we held out. We were willing to give them that easement, but we didn't want to be paid for it. We exchanged that for the trail easement, which is now the Ravenswood Bay Trail. So that's an opportunity made. In Half Moon Bay, we entered into a partnership on the Johnston Ranch property and the Johnston House property. And that partnership also involved Post. And that will provide community access to existing ped bike trails, downtown Half Moon Bay, and the coastal trail, aspirationally, and I believe someday, to state parks, and also be another part of the Bay to the Sea Trail. Working with other departments, Real Property is finalizing a memorandum of agreement with the city of Half Moon Bay to formalize this partnership in the planning process for shared parking and trailhead on the city's property. Both Alan and Aaron are leading that. And this just brings up future collaborations. I think both East Palo Alto and Half Moon Bay, there are opportunities in the future. In East Palo Alto, there will be opportunities to support environmental ed at Cooley Landing. In the city of Half Moon Bay, I believe that the city of Half Moon Bay will help us identify a coastal field office, and there may be potential opportunities to support additional farm labor housing on the San Mateo coast. So those partnerships can go beyond just the acquisition projects that we do. They can be trail building projects and parking lots. And I do believe in the future there will be opportunities to work with the redwood agencies, Save the Redwoods, Sempervirens Fund, and Post to help protect the larger Pescadero watershed. It's the biggest fund of money that we have in our Measure AA. And I think there's an opportunity with all of the timber companies that work in that area. So one of the things we get to do when we plan is dream about what if we did this? And many times we get to act on those dreams and bring them into fruition. So when Jay was up here, I remember starting my career in right-of-way at Caltrans, and I worked with engineers, and I just followed an engineer. We're not so vertical or linear, but we do find ways to protect the lands, which in addition to our staff is the district's other great resource. So that's my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, well, very, very inspiring to see it from your eyes and how much of it's been realized so far. So thank you for all your work. Okay, well, I might start down. Is there any questions down here? Nope.
One question, do you want comments at the same time?
Okay.
Yeah. Fantastic, Mike. Such a vital team. Just thinking about how many different, very complicated projects you've been involved in. Not you, only you personally, but your staff. It's just really bring these things forward after years of working kind of before we even understand that there's a possibility. And then, here, let's consider purchasing this. And so, fantastic job. Really, really appreciate it.
Yes, Dr. Holman.
It's kind of hard to know what to say because, I look at, all this green on the map, and that's the natural resources. And then there's so much human resource behind our natural resources and bringing those to fruition. And you've been, the keystone of this for so many, many years and put together a very good team. And I appreciate everything you said about thinking creativity and like dreaming and look what your dream has created. So I'm greatly indebted to you and your team, and you especially because of your years of dedication to what you do and what you're so masterful at. To end with a preposition, sorry about that. Thank you.
I appreciate the compliment, but it's so many of the people that came before in this agency and other agencies. It's the staff that's here, the collaboration. It's the incredible partners. And you can really do a lot more when you work collaboratively, internally and externally. And it really, this is a job, and it has work aspects that aren't my favorite things. Boy, but those are the fun things. The people at this agency and other agencies that we get to work with. And it really is a team effort. And I mean that.
And certainly my comments weren't to discount anybody else's contributions, but I really, on this occasion, wanted to really recognize you.
I know, and I wanted to recognize
Yeah.
all the incredible support,
Yes.
support I get from, this agency and others.
It's one of the things that makes you good at what you do. So
Thank
it's
you.
back on you.
Okay.
Okay, Director Whipple, yes.
So, Mike, obviously, we've been very successful, largely because you and the team. Also, you're standing on some incredible shoulders. I think of Dell and Craig and folks that have really kind of got us into this business, and you made us even better. And so I remember you trained me early on, and you said, Kurt, there's 4 reasons, 4 Ds, why we get property, right? And maybe some of the newcomers on the board haven't heard this before, but I don't know who can repeat them, right? Death, debt, disease, and divorce. I think I got the 4 right. Is the reason that people come to us.
Well, we keep trying to come up with new ones. Disaster, right? Like fires.
Yeah.
Diapers.
Ah,
People decide, they move up there and they say, wait a minute, our kids have to go to school and they move.
Oh,
There's an
right,
opportunity.
right.
But I should probably stop there. Disasters in diapers is going down a dark road.
Well, the other four weren't so likely either, but actually you are heading in a direction though of my question, and that is, say we weren't at the end of your career, but actually you were at the start of your career as you're looking at this. So what are the things that, you think that this department needs to either learn how to do or do better going forward? Because one could argue, and you probably wouldn't agree with this, that all the low hanging fruit we've got. Now it's the hard ones that we've got to go find and do. I don't know if you agree with that or not. And, but therefore, what is it that, we should be thinking about from a board as your department goes on, and stands on your shoulders?
I think the collaboration needs to continue and other people need to, take that torch and carry it forward. And I think it's just very, very important. And I think, for the Pescadero watershed, we haven't worked with Save the Redwoods and Sempervirens for a number of years. And I think we need to do that. It's going to be different, and it's not going to be fee title. It's going to be conservation timber easements. And they have that expertise, but we're going to be a funding partner. And so there's going to be trail elements in that too. And so I think we may need, more expertise in conservation easements on staff at some time. But we can also rely on those partners that have that expertise. It's really the thing I've been thinking about is just the succession plan, and just to set things up for success in the future. And then think about the challenges for staff that where they need to step up. I just realize over time, I worked with Del Woods for years, great planner. And then I had Sandy Summer, great planner. Ailish Ryan, 7 years, just great. And maybe I had one of my best working relationships with Ailish. It's just so compatible. And then I was like, oh gosh, she's retiring. And then Aaron came along. And so, I also feel we're all replaceable. We hire people with passion, as Jay said, for this job. And we just, we just need to realize that is such an important asset. It's going to be tougher, and the low hanging fruit is largely gone. But there are some simple ones out there if somebody wants to sell them, right? There's some small or good sized vacant properties. And just the follow through of keeping an eye on those things so that they don't slip through and we get the opportunity. There's great people here, and just this program, I hope it continues to be supported. At some point in time, there's not going to be any more land to buy, or it's built on, or it's maybe financially out of reach. I don't know. So it is a program unlike others that has an end, but it's not for a while. So I think continue to support the program until all that we can protect has been protected.
That is, unless we expand our boundaries, but that's another topic.
I decided not to go there, but I could. Yeah. And that's another dream. Yeah.
yeah.
But for another time.
Okay, we won't go there. But I'm looking at this lovely quilt of dark green and light green and white, and I'm thinking, there are opportunities. It seems that there are opportunities, some big ones. And how do you think about developing relationships, or kind of, I don't even know what the word is, cultivating the opportunities that are that are out there. I think around Pescadero, and you see around Tunitas Creek, and I'm looking mostly on the coast, but how do you approach that cultivation element of your job? And is that something that could be expanded moving forward?
You know, the best examples are the ones in the past. In East Palo Alto, we wanted to learn who to work with in the community. And this person who works for EPA, not the city of East Palo Alto, but the Environmental Protection Agency, Lily Lee. And she had done an initial study on the Bay Trail and the Gap. And Tina had worked with her some, and Tina put Gretchen and I in contact with her. And we sat down with her, and she gave us a lot of recommendations how to do our public outreach and who to contact. And you should do it in Spanish as well. And so you know, and that was 10 or so years ago, but I think that same kind of thing applies. You go in and learn who in communities that are the people that make things happen, and you get to understand that, and then you engage them on what our mission is. I think we have a great mission, right? It can be easy to sell, maybe not to the Farm Bureau, but and then if you find how it has meanings to those communities, and that's public engagement, listening to them and responding to, ask them, how do you think we should do this? You know, what would you like a field trip up? Float your ideas by them, and they make them better. And you know, and similar with Half Moon Bay, getting to know their staff and some of the people in that community. If you can build a little bit of support from community leaders, and then keep that going, and you're going to be seeing that at Cloverdale and Pescadero with what Land and Facilities and Visitor Services is going to be embarking upon. And we just need to, you know, it's an iterative process because people will change over time, but you have to keep that going. And Laura O'Leary at Post said to me the other day, people like that you're public and that you're transparent, and that when you come and talk, you're very open about things. And you know, Post doesn't have to do that as a private agency, and they can move quicker than us because they can make decisions in private and move on them. And that's why they're such a valuable partner, because then we can come and go through that public process. But it's different. But it's nice to get that feedback too from our partners. And where our partners have worked someplace a lot longer than us, you know, pick their brain. So it is something just in part, but it's a lot of soft skills. And I don't think when I first started at the district, I believed as much in the public engagement process as I do now. And it really is one of the rewarding things when you know, the public supports the things you do. And then so I guess I'm kind of rambling a little bit.
Well, I just want to follow up on that, Mike, because you alluded to this in your earlier presentation, the degree to which not just you, but other staff members at Post have been so instrumental in creating relationships on the coast side. And it seems that kind of relationship building, it's not just you, it's across the staff, you know, how important it is to the job that you do. So I really appreciate that you called that out, and that you have worked, I think, to create a great example, if you will, to the rest of the staff around, you know, how you build relationships and work in a transparent and supportive way. So that's great. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Dr. Gleason.
Yeah, I really appreciate your presentation, and also that you're sharing a lot of history and also you know, putting the spotlight on both the people you work with now and the people you worked with before. And you know, you said your organization is small, but you get a lot done. I think that's a real understatement. I didn't realize it was as small as it is. And I've spent some time looking over things like the old maps of Sierra Azul, and you watch as over time as the patchwork gets filled in, it's gone from mostly not there to almost all there. And I think it's really exciting. People are very, very excited about regional trail opportunities and other opportunities there. I also wanted to say that I spent some significant time with both Aaron and Alan, and just really, really impressive, super competent, very, very enthusiastic and creative, and really appreciate the learning that I took from them. And then finally, just very interested in hearing more about the Pescadero watershed as we go forward. I think it's, like you say, it's a really good opportunity to work with these other organizations that are doing great work. And I think that partnership can be, really great going forward. So, thanks.
And I'll just mention real quick, that's a different dynamic than communities, because there's three big timber owners, and Save the Redwoods and Post and Sempervirens, to a lesser degree, have had relationships with those companies, and we can learn from them. But it's, they're in the business of doing timber production, so it is a different challenge, and they're not going to want to sell, in most cases, fee title. But there's incredible redwood watershed that can be further protected there.
Yeah, yes. This is Anna Ruiz, General Manager. Just a few remarks myself too. Is Mike, I feel like Mike is part of the heart and soul of this organization, and not just with his dedication and passion for the mission and the work, but he really places a strong value on people. And I think you've heard that a lot today, and the power of relationships. And I have just witnessed his perseverance in developing, cultivating, establishing relationships with neighbors, with community members, with cities, with organizations, with our partners, within the staff, and knowing that there's a lot of investment that comes in to establish those relationships, and you have to work at it and cultivate those. But over time, those develop into some amazing opportunities that he has really created here for Midpen. And you see that with the lands that he has helped protect and preserve in perpetuity, but also in so many other opportunities that we now have to leverage, whether those be future partnerships with communities, whether those be regional trails that did not exist before, habitat connectivity and wildlife corridors. It's sort of built upon itself over time. And so I want to thank you, Mike, for your leadership as well, and all of your contributions, and for instilling that here at Midpen, the importance of relationships.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Michael. Wow, this has been just so inspiring to hear. Your contribution, your vision, and that of Jay as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
I think that's it.
And I'm looking for an IT job after this.
Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah. Those are true.
Kishimoto, I do not have any oral comments for this item.
Oh, yes. Okay. Thank you. Terrific. All right. So I think we're so a lot of great conversation. All right. So let's move on to informational reports. Committee reports. Are there any committees since the last meeting? Here we are. Okay, wow.
Board committees or?
Yes, board committees. So here's the two of them. So would somebody like to speak for LAFPAC?
Sure.
Yes, okay.
I was there. I was the only one there. She was there, but so I took your seat. Yeah. The modification to the monetary risk acknowledgement policy language. I was so excited to sit in your seat. I didn't remember too much about that, but I do remember the implementation plan for updating the board policy and the good neighbor policy. And it was a very, very good discussion. Thank you.
Okay, excellent.
In fact,
Yes.
Corey has already implemented one of my suggestions
Uh-huh.
with the postcard that gets sent out to neighbors.
The postcard.
Upcoming purchase, and it was very nice.
Oh, great. Excellent. Okay, PNR, Planning and Natural Resources, who's going to report on that? Jed?
Yeah, we met. And it the printout covers a lot of presentation that was given. So we reviewed the project goals and existing conditions and then site opportunities and constraints. I don't recall that we added a whole lot to the staff report, but I think we received it with the we took a look and didn't find any reason to modify it. So it was a good meeting in that respect. So thank you.
Okay, very good. Staff reports. Here comes our CFO.
Stefan Jaskelak, CFO. Want to give you a quick update on the FOSM refresh. It's been a while since I've done that. Basically, where we are right now is completely on schedule. The contract was signed by both parties in March. And we've started scheduling items for this month, for April. In fact, next Tuesday, we're taking the Baker Tilly team, or a few of the members, on a field trip. If you remember, the project director and project manager are the same as from the original FOSM, but a lot of coastal work is new to them. We've done a lot of work on the coast, basically. So we're going to take them out there and show them around. And it includes, we're going to start here. Then we'll go up to Skyline Field Office, so they get refreshed with what a full-blown field office entails. Then, and I don't have the order exactly right, probably, but then we go to La Honda, to the Sears Ranch parking area to see what that looks like, what trails look like, and grazing, etc. Then to the coastal outpost with the idea of, okay, this is a small outpost. We need a big office on the coast one of these days. And then we'll also go to, I think, South Cowell and wrap it up at Johnson. So it gives a lot of different flavors of what we're doing on the coast. Gives them a little bit of a hands-on, a visual, if you will. And then the plan is the following week is to start a deeper dive on the various programs that we're asking them to evaluate, like the coastal management plan, the docent volunteer, the fire resiliency plans, etc. And then we'll start continuing with deeper and deeper dives as May rolls on. So we're still on schedule for to have some initial reports September, October, with some initial actionable items. And as we step through each phase, I'll come back and update you at the end of board meetings. And of course, if there's questions in the meantime, I'm more than happy to answer those.
So we would come back next to the board overall in the fall.
In the fall, yes.
In the fall.
Yes, it'll start with draft reports, get for board feedback on that as well, and then finalize the reports.
Okay.
Right.
That's good. Okay, thank you.
And then another quick update, Jay was being very modest about the FEMA work. I don't want to overuse the old saying, if it takes a village, but this really does. FEMA is very involved. We were able to tag along with San Mateo County to get involved with the FEMA response. Cal OES is also involved in that as part of the managing entity. And I don't know if you're familiar with how intensive FEMA work can be for the grantee, for us, and it's a project in and of itself. So far, under leadership of LNF and ENC, supported by planning and natural resources, and I think sometimes perhaps even real property, they've identified 15 projects, some of which are combined, like multiple culverts, for example. 15 projects ranging anywhere from $6 to $8 million at the moment, and that's damage done through January 31st. As you know, there's multiple storms since then, so we don't know yet if FEMA is going to extend that timeline, or if there's going to be a second round or whatnot. But it's quite considerable. I think maybe AGM alone will have some update too, but he mentioned something about 1,200 trees being cleared just in Skyline alone. I mean, that's massive. We're also looking at, Jay mentioned the culvert in Bear Creek. Well, that goes all the way under the parking lot, roads, bridges, trails, etc. I mean, it's extensive. And of course, I mean, $6 to $8 million to bring that in to cover that is an opportunity to jump on, but it'll also require quite a bit of managing as we go through the projects, do the construction, get the reimbursements, show FEMA around, literally hold their hands basically as we step through every step of the way, as we're also finding our own way through the process, because we're new at this as well. It's been done before in the past, but that's knowledge that's largely lost. So we're working through it. It takes a village. It's a lot of money, and we'll keep you posted on that as well. So.
Okay, thank you.
Brian Malone, Assistant General Manager. I just wanted to give a quick update on preserve closures. But first, something that Mike's presentation brought to mind was East Palo Alto actually approved their Parks Master Plan that we really coordinated with them quite a bit last week. One of the elements of that is a proposal to open up the end of Rutgers Avenue and the University Avenue neighborhood, which I've been working with them and SFPUC on the proposal. So now that they've completed the master plan, we can really get to work on trying to complete that project, so we have direct access from the neighborhood rather than having to go all the way out to University Avenue and around. So really excited about that one. I've already actually drafted the application that EPA would put into SFPUC. So I think we'll probably have to pressure SFPUC, but it's already that easement that Mike negotiated with them is on one side of the gate, and then the city road is on the other side of the gate. So it's even though we have to get their permission, it is the matter of just opening up a gate. So hopefully we'll get that done. But exciting project. And then also exciting is that we were able to reopen access to the Mindigo parking area at Russian Ridge because the county made repairs to Alpine Road. Bear Creek, we were talking about the culvert repair, remains closed. I also wanted to let you know I spoke a meeting or so ago about that we were planning on closing the access into Lower Parisma. I had just reported a day or so ago to the general manager that we hadn't heard too much about that, although I heard today that we were getting several calls at the front desk. So I just wanted to prepare you that as I predicted, some of the neighbors might appreciate that we're not having people parking down there because the Higgins Canyon Road closure, but then also might not appreciate not having physical access into the preserve. So we have gotten a few inquiries about that. So I just wanted to let you know about that. Thornwood access is still closed because of Ravenswood to the main parking lot. And then there's still a number of trail closures as well that are looking into the repairs that we'll need to do as part of the FEMA work. And it's several people have covered it, but we will be going to ABC with some adjustments to the work plan that was presented at the retreat to be able to take on those storm damage repairs.
Mhm. Oh,
Thank
just a
you.
quick question. Do you know if Hicks Road is reopened or?
The last I heard, Hicks was closed, but I would have to confirm that. Mount Umunham was at the time still accessible, going through
New Almaden?
New Almaden Road past Alamitos Reservoir.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Yes.
Hope this is an okay question. Where are the best wildflower accesses because of road closures and trail closures? Where's the best wildflower?
Yeah, so we actually, our public affairs just did a contribution to a Mercury article just to talk about some of the top spots. I will say this is not our thing, but I just went to Pinnacles and it is really popping right now. So for your personal, like if you want to take a trip this weekend, the Pinnacles is really incredible right now on the west side. And then our own board member reported that the Johnny Jump Ups are starting to come up at Russian Ridge, but that full kind of Russian Ridge typical wildfire show will probably be a little bit later in the season. And we're not necessarily encouraging that because of the damages, but there's still access to Skyline Ridge, Montebello, Los Trancos, and Russian Ridge, which are our, some of our classic wildfire places.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Maybe spread over a longer season.
Yeah, probably a little bit colder, maybe a little bit later, maybe shorter because the peak of our wildfire season is the period between when the flowers come up and then they get covered by the grass. So that, the flowers will be in there, but you can't really see them too well after the grass gets high, which will happen quickly this year.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if nobody else has director reports, and yes.
Yeah, on Saturday, I attended a volunteer restoration event led by Ellen Gartside at the Overlook Trail in El Sereno. It's probably the closest Mid-Penn trail to my house, so I go there a lot. And it was a very, very fun event. And thanks to Ellen, I think I can identify more of the native plants there as well as some of the non-natives. And we were pulling Italian thistle there, made quite a bit of progress on the trail. So also Gali from the planning team was there, and she brought some of her extended family and friends. So it was a great group.
Director McNiven and I have attended both the Farm Day lunch and then also the Farm Bureau meeting in which staff led by Brian presented the draft ag policy. And it was actually, I think, a very constructive meeting. A lot of interesting questions were answered, and Brian did a spectacular job of answering them well and maintaining his cool. And it was I think it was a productive meeting. So really appreciate the turnout from staff for that.
Just two quick items. First is I attended the Santa Clara County Parks virtual public meeting about updating their countywide trails master plan. That hasn't actually been updated since 1995. So they're hoping that the process will result in an updated version in the fall of 2023. The second is I had the chance to attend the in-person public workshop in Los Gatos about the Bear Creek Trails Phase 2 trail options. So this is where we had a chance to hear from the equestrian community and the biking community and somewhat the hiking community about our options that we have there. I would guess, Craig, you were there. I'm going to guess there was 40 or so people.
Yeah, it was pretty full.
Really?
Yeah, it was, and very, very interactive and very lively. It was a great event.
Staff, as usual, did a great job of facilitating.
Okay, as I mentioned earlier, I attended the Santa Clara Valley Water Commission meeting this afternoon. And we'll meet, representing the district, we meet generally twice a year. And decided to move up the next meeting from October to August. So The key element here was the explanation of suggested rate increases by staff. And of course, there were a number of comments about, well, there's a lot of water around. What is this? Well, predominantly it's to deal with long-range, large capital items. They're estimating somewhere in the $9 billion range over, 10 years or so. So those of us looking at Anderson, for example, we're forced into that, and then we get a huge rainy season and can't use, that other 90% that had to keep going downstream. And then the thing that they did want to mention is that there's a campaign to make sure people are aware that there is assistance for paying one's water bill. And they're advertising that so that you might be eligible to receive a credit of up to $1,000 on your water bill through Sacred Heart's Water Assistance Program. So just, I'm not sure we need to put that out in our newsletter, but certainly, in conversation, anybody, just to make sure that folks are aware that this is available. So those are kind of the key items. So thank you.
No more reports there? Okay, I have a couple reports. I guess one is that I did go to, let's see, a LAFCO meeting on April 5th and BCDC meeting on April 6th. And then I've also been, I didn't attend, but I heard about a couple developments regarding Lehigh. So, one is that Valley Water actually had a committee meeting to talk about the possibility of using the big pit as a water storage. And I think the staff recommendation generally was that it wasn't very promising, but I think it's gonna go to their full board. And then the Permanente Creek EIR is out and the cement plant is closed. And so I think I think I've talked to our general manager about maybe just getting a short update on all the items that because there's a number of items which are circulating about Lehigh. And then coming up, I do have a couple brown bags. I think they've been sent out as calendar invites, but April 26th is we're calling it wildflower mimicry. So it's kind of both biodiversity and social diversity. It's kind of a South Asian twist on looking at wildflowers. So I think it should be interesting. And then May 22nd going out is a session on California, the 30 by 30 plan. And we're going to have one of the assistant secretaries from the of natural resources from the state, as well as Josh Hogg is the speaker as well. That's May 22nd, and that's going to be, so these are a little bit different times, so pay attention to the time. April 26th is 1 to 2 p.m. and May 22nd is 12 to 1:30. And I think that is it. So, so with that, I will adjourn this meeting, and yeah, good meeting, good comments, and good meeting, everybody. Oh, yes, it's, I would like to adjourn the meeting in memory of the Honorable Pete Siemens.